Hello, everybody. It's Pastor Chris here from St. Andrew Christian Church, and here to talk about the sermon for this coming Sunday. And we embark on a brand new series this week. It's going to be a 3-week series that will carry us through the month of July. And I've usually done kind of topical series, and this is the first time in a while I've done more of a biblical series. It's basically 3 weeks on the prophet Ezekiel from the Hebrew Bible. And thinking, what are we doing in Ezekiel? I have to admit that I have a little bit of affinity toward this particular prophet of the Hebrew Bible. Spent a whole semester in seminary studying Ezekiel. Sounds like a really fun job, to study Ezekiel for a month. But I found that there's a lot in this particular prophet that still speaks to the realities of what we experience in our life and times today. And so something that was preached about when Ezekiel was speaking was Babylonian exile time, I think 500 BCE. I mean, it's like 2,500 years ago. It seems like ancient stuff. But there's still a lot of relevant things that happened in Ezekiel's period that I think translate to things that are happening in our world today. So this first week, I'm picking 3 chapters out of the entire body of literature out of Ezekiel. And 3 chapters I think are seminal chapters or seminal passages that are crucial to the entire book of Ezekiel. And the first one is chapter 1. And chapter 1 is a crazy chapter. It's got all this funky imagery in it of wheels and winged creatures, and you're like, what am I reading? Am I reading someone that's got kind of a warped brain when I'm reading this passage? But there's something about this passage that's crucial for how Ezekiel is trying to motivate people to think that God is still with them, even when they feel as though God has deserted them. And this weird image that appears in chapter 1 of Ezekiel is meant to be a metaphor that describes to God's people, wherever you go, you can't go anywhere where God is not. We often feel like we've been abandoned in life, or why did God do this to me? And we're so filled with all kinds of why questions. Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen in the world? And where is God in all of this stuff? And one of these things that we find in this first chapter of Ezekiel is this notion is there's never anywhere we can't go that God is not going to be present to us, and that we don't have access to that presence in some way. And it's a reminder that we're not alone. Even in the hardest periods of our life, we can sometimes feel alone. And this chapter is a reminder that even in the hardest moments of our life, God is still present to us. I think that's an important thing. When we look at the world around us and we look at just on the landscape of the United States, all the challenges we face, and we are in challenging times. We're finding ourselves in an election year, and all kinds of divisive language and rhetoric gets out there, and we wonder, what in the world, what kind of world are we living in? Is God present anywhere in the world? We can still say yes to that, even when it may seem hard to make that declaration. And so this week is this opening up of this whole prophet Ezekiel. We'll talk a little bit about the history of how Ezekiel enters the scene, but how that message travels over 2,500 plus years to our 2024 day and time. And what does that still mean for us today? So we're going to give that a shot. We're going to explore it a little bit and see where we might come out in the end. So I hope you'll join us on Sunday for our sermon this week.